Everyone can go ahead and turn their cameras on. Hello. Good morning, everyone. We are so incredibly excited to host virtual space with folks around the country this morning in celebration of both Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, MLK Day, and what would have been Muhammad Ali's 80th birthday. We've got a lot of fun things happening at the Ali Center. Today, we actually have our new CEO who started today, Marilyn Jackson. And I also am extremely pleased to announce that we actually received a $2 million donation in honor of Muhammad's 80th birthday. So just a lot of fun energy at the center. If you're in Louisville, Kentucky, I extremely strongly suggest that you come down to the center today. What we're doing right now from 11:30 to 12:30 is we are virtually hosting our panel with our dynamic students, or a few of our dynamic students from the Muhammad Ali Center Council of Students. This is a group that meets bi-weekly to discuss pertinent issues that face youth in not only our local community, but also our national and international community. And we're just so excited to hear from them today about what it means to continue the dream and continue the legacy of both Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Muhammad Ali. So to get us started, I'm going to do some introductions, and then we're going to turn it over to our panelists for some questions. My first introduction is Spatina Pavalori. Spatina is a junior at DuPont Manual High School in the Math, Science, and Technology Magnet. This is her second year in being a part of the MAX program, and she is also involved in other organizations, including the Kentucky Student Youth Voice Team and STEMI. She believes it is vital that students are able to speak up and be taken seriously on the issues that are important to them And in her free time, she loves to paint, cook, and drive. Can you wave for everyone, Spatina? Awesome. Next, we have Soliana Messman. Soliana is a junior at Eastern High School studying consumer management. Soliana has pursued activism over the past couple of years in the areas of education, racial equity, and mental health across district and statewide levels. She serves as the first student member on the Kentucky Board of Education and pursues education advocacy with the Kentucky Department of Education Student Council and Kentucky Student Voice Team. Soliana has been recognized nationally for advocating for the implementation of diverse student voice. Within these positions, she emphasizes the importance of racial equity in every upcoming initiative. Similarly, serving on the Louisville Mayor's Youth Board, she has been pursuing equitable policy and reform across the city. Soliana continues to amplify the importance of diverse youth-driven spaces as a catalyst for change. Soliana, can you wave for everyone? Awesome. Next, we have Sean Cecil. Sean is a current senior at Jeffersonville High School. He has been a member of MAX since 2019. Along with Max, Sean is also involved in other extracurricular activities involving his community. He's the president of the Louisville Kappa League, a program focused on providing leadership development for young men in 8th through 12th grade. He is also a member of the core team for Voice Indiana, an organization dedicated to encouraging teens to live a tobacco and vape-free life. Even with his after-school activities, Sean is still working hard in school to go to college and eventually become a forensic technician. Can you wait for everyone, Sean? Awesome. Next, we have Kindea Motley. Kindea is a 17-year-old senior who attends Jeffersonville High School, a sprinter on her track team, president of Jeffersonville High School Black Student Union, president of the NAACP Youth Chapter of Jeffersonville, peer educator at Planned Parenthood, a MAX member, and a part of the production team at radio and TV WJHI 98.5 station. Day by day, she puts her focus on strengthening her civic engagement, and her motivation is remembering that she is living her ancestors' wildest dreams. Can you wave for everyone so they know who you are? And then last but certainly not least, we have Trinity Wooten. Trinity is a young activist from Louisville, Kentucky. She is very passionate and strives for change within her community. Trinity is a senior at J. Graham Brown School and plans to attend college in the fall. In her free time, she writes poetry about social justice issues and is an alumni of the Kentucky Governor's School for Arts. Last but certainly most not least, Kennedy, can you wave so everyone can know who you are? Awesome, awesome. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. Max, please feel free to go ahead and come off mute and answer the questions in whatever order you see fit. So our very first question is, you all are a part of the Muhammad Ali Center Council of Students. Could one or a few of you describe your experience and what it means to be a part of MAX?
I'll go first. My experience, it's nice to be around what I describe a passionate space of young individuals and my peers who share the same interests and the same passion and the same energy I do to fight and strengthen our civic engagement together and sharpen each other's iron.
Yeah, I totally have to agree with everything Kindea said. I think it's really about students being able to impact their communities and do service and just really advocate for the issues that they care about. And I think a lot of the time students really aren't taken super seriously, and they the issues they want to prioritize are not really acted upon or covered. And I think that's what makes Max so different. It's like any of us can bring any issue to the table that's been bothering us or that makes us upset and that we want to talk about and do something about, and there's always time that's made for it. So I really think the difference is just that a lot of times there's like predetermined agendas, but in Max we really get to make the agenda, and it's something so beautiful about this space. And then also I just think it's about really uplifting the values and the character that Muhammad Ali and MLK really represented. I think it's about constantly fighting for equity, whether that be in education or politics or legislation. So I think we just get to learn so much and form connections and grow together, and it's really an amazing experience.
I completely agree. I think it's such an uplifting space, and we are truly awarded for our diverse ideologies. So not everybody thinks the same. Not everybody has a set way of tackling an issue, and we are prized on that. And it's so amazing that it truly represents what youth-led actually means. And like Spandana said, it's often when people say youth-led, you have these adults, determining the discussions and doing this and doing that, but this is really kind of a free-for-all. And it's truly designing our current change makers and the change makers of tomorrow.
And I'll add on just a little bit. To me, Max is really like a family. I've been involved in Max since I was a sophomore. And just like Soliana was saying, I think we share differences in our perspectives of life. And then we come together in the Max space and share these perspectives, and then we learn from each other. And then I also think we're similar in our mission to fight against the inequalities of our community.
Awesome. So I'm going to go to our next question. This question's a little bit longer, so bear with me here. So during Derby 1967, Black Louisvillians planned actions in protest of unfair housing practices in the city. In direct retaliation, the Ku Klux Klan announced that they would attend the Derby in full regalia with the potential for counteraction. In hopes of disrupting potential violence, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. planned a housing rally in downtown Louisville. Muhammad Ali joined the rally, as did hundreds of Louisvillians who were fighting for fair housing. As we all know, and I've said at the beginning of this, today is both Muhammad Ali's birthday and MLK Day. If the two were to host a similar rally today in downtown Louisville, for what would they be fighting?
Well, when I was thinking about this question, I was thinking like the housing thing is still something that's, you know, a very relevant issue. And it's because like as a result of like redlining and all of that stuff that happened, you'd think, oh, it happened a long time ago, and so now there's no effects, but it's so apparent. Even within Louisville, if you look at a map and if you look at demographics, it's very clear where certain skews are and the effects of redlining. And it's just really hurt Black communities because they're denied like loans and they're denied jobs and things that are so important to like getting money and having a stable income and being able to support children financially and support them in education. And so there's just so many effects of it, and it's just generationally, it just keeps going. And so I think they'd really be fighting for that because it's still something that's so important to address and that really doesn't get talked about enough. And then the other thing I think they talk about is really like educational inequities, because like as an MST student, I've been in MST in STEM classes literally since 6th grade, and I can count on my fingers the number of Black students that have been in my classes. And that's horrible. And it's not reflective of their abilities or anything like that. It's just because our educational systems hurt Black students. And, you know, students like me, like I've had a ton of resources all my life. Like I'm literally looking to my left right now and I have like a whole shelf of books. And, you know, that always helped me. And so I was able to do really well in school. And I have an amazing computer that I can always rely on. And I never had to worry about things like that. And a lot of students can't say the same. And so they're not given as many opportunities. And then you lead to situations where the MST magnet doesn't have many Black students, but has a lot of, you know, Indian or Asian students. And it's just really, really sad to see that. So I definitely think they would be fighting for those two issues just because they're so important.
To add on really quick,
Yeah.
I was thinking the exact same thing. I'm so sorry. To add on really quick, I was thinking the exact same thing. I was just like, we probably still be fighting for it, plus everything else. But I'm just like, we probably still be fighting for it because we're definitely still dealing with it, including the factories polluting the marginalized communities' housing areas and their babies and their families. And then I also wanted to add on probably the disconnect within the Black community itself. There's so many things that have been put in the Black community to destroy it. And with the guns, the drinking, the smoking, the gangs, all these things. So I definitely agree with Spandana 100% because I was thinking the same thing. I'm just like, probably still be fighting for it. With a lot of it, pretty much, in my opinion, everything we were fighting for, as we always say, then, it's now. So, Trinity.
Yeah, I agree with everything that has been said. I was thinking about my answer to this question. My first response was the unequal distribution of resources in our communities. I think unfortunately Louisville is a very segregated city, especially by race. I feel like the West End holds a vast majority of people of color, while the East End holds a vast majority of white people. And just looking at that, you can see there are like new grocery stores being brought up in the East End every week. But then in the West End, there are food deserts and barely any resources. So I definitely agree with everything that was said.
Yeah, you guys read my mind 100%. I think maybe the only thing I'd have to add is, you know, over the past couple of years, we have seen these instances of police brutality, especially within Louisville, and we have a very prevalent police department who does perpetuate all these inequities. So honestly, I believe they would advocate for institutional reform, not only for, the police department in particular, but, for all institutions that continually cause these inequities and continue to separate the Black community from prosperous communities within Louisville.
I couldn't agree more. With our whole justice system and everything, I feel like that would be a key issue that they would have to talk about. And I feel like you couldn't go like with any rally without talking about the issue of our justice system in America as a whole, not only Louisville. And I feel like we hit all the points on that. I know there's a lot more issues in our society, but I feel like those would be the key points that they would tackle.
Awesome. Thank you all. Thank you. So for our third question, this kind of goes back to Dr. Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, right? And for anyone that's in Louisville, the Ali Center is actually showing that speech every hour in our auditorium. So again, just a shameless plug, come to the Ali Center today. There's really great energy. We're having a blood drive where we have the I Have a Dream speech playing on loop. So if you can pop by at any time, you can go into our auditorium and experience that. But kind of back to these questions, I Have a Dream was a call to action. And as we continue the dream, what actions do you think young people in particular can take to combat inequalities? And then the second part of that question is how can folks from other generations support collective youth action? So I'll just repeat again. As we continue the dream, what do you think that young people in particular can do or already are doing to combat inequalities and inequities? And how can folks from other generations support collective youth action?
I'll go. I think for young people, it's key to make your voice be heard, no matter what, especially through social media. That's our biggest tool, just making people aware and educating people on topics that they may not know about. And I feel like that's also key for older generations, just to learn and be able to share your voice and make people know about the issues in our society.
I agree. I think there's a lot of things that youth can do, but the problem is that, you know, we're not advised to do those things, and we're not taught how to you know, reach out to a council member, how to, you know, attack a certain policy within the school or even city. And so that's a lot of the things where we aren't trusted with our knowledge and expertise. And so you know, youth can do a lot of really amazing things, but I think that is one of the biggest barriers in that. And also the second question of, I believe just older generations have to acknowledge that we do have different experiences and those are valid and just as worthy as theirs. And we really need this sort of connection in order to influence change to the fullest extent. And if both sides aren't willing to acknowledge each other's experiences, then I don't think that can be accomplished. So it's just through connection and acknowledgement of what we know.
Absolutely, Stoliana. You said exactly what I was thinking as well, because the idea that limiting our age as kids instead of adults in the making, the next generation, the people who will be in the offices answering the questions, all these things, it's the previous generation's jobs to want to progress and do better. So you have to give us the confidence, fuel us to believe that our voice does matter, because our voices will be the voices that need to be heard in years to come. So, and even not even years to come when we're adults, now matters too, because we are experiencing things and we want to do better as generations go by. So to answer the question, I want to flip it as the actions we can take is what we do in Max. Pushing organizations like this are so important because we fellowship together and we build together and we fight together and we talk. You know, we have a very intimate space of understanding one another and understanding our frustrations of what's going on, what's breaking our heart, and we try to put action to it. And I think we're doing great by doing that. So this is what I would always recommend organizations like Max, and to the generations, it's important that you remember we are adults in the making. We're the next step. We're next. So.
Yeah, and really just to bounce off what everyone's been saying, I really think like, and especially like Kindea's point is young people have an expertise that we really just don't tap into so often. And that's just upsetting, honestly. And it stops our growth, it stops our development. And what I mean by that is like before like high school, and I guess like in middle school and early high school, I was just like I didn't realize that like what I had to say could be taken seriously and what I had to say was important and what I knew about, you know, my own education and I knew about the problems I see. But when I joined Max and things like Kentucky Student Voice Team, I started realizing how important what I had to say was, and people were willing to listen and they were willing to talk about what was important to me. And it really made me start to think about all these students that aren't uplifted. They aren't told your voice is important, and so we never get to hear what they have to say. And that's so sad to think about because every single student, you know, has so much expertise and it varies in so many ways. And if we had those voices, think about the change we can make. And I really just think there's like so many different avenues students can go down and young people can go down to like influence change and combat inequalities. Like, for example, one of the things I think about is like research. Like a lot of times you think, oh, like researchers have to be people with PhDs and they have to be adults and they have to be super like old and smart and everything like that. But like that's not true. And in the like recently I've been doing some like work on like conducting school climate surveys to like hear from the students and like I'm able to make those forms and like I'm able to have discussions with other students and we're able to lead that research. And I think it just goes to show how students are capable of things that we often think are, you know, only for older experts. And, you know, I think Sean hit on a great point with like social media, like that is our tool. And that is something that we get to dictate a lot of the time. And it's really, really awesome to see how people use their voices there. And so, yeah, I really just think for older generations, just like trying your best to like listen to students, but not just listen, take note of it and try and make your own actions based on it is super important. Like, it's not enough to just listen and then kind of cast it aside. You don't want to do superficial like student voice. You want to actually make an effort to uplift it. So I really just agree with everything everyone has already said.
I know I keep saying it, but I really do agree with everything that has been said, especially Kindea's point where she was talking about how for the older generation to give us confidence, because I think that's really important. Like oftentimes we're told we're too young to understand certain things. So I think it's really a boost of ego and really helps keep us motivated if we're given confidence. And I also just want to emphasize like the fact that when being an activist, I think it's most important. The first step to take is to find your place in activism. Not everyone is a frontliner, not everyone is a speaker, but just find your talent and then use that talent to help the movement. So, like me, I love writing. So, I create poetry based off of different social justice issues, and then I perform those poems. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks. I love literally everything that you all were saying. I was getting jazzed. I was taking notes like, okay, yeah, I need to make sure to like bring these up in this meeting. Yes. No, that was awesome. Thank you all so much. I also really want to make sure that we hear from every one of you on this next question, especially given how you responded to the previous one. And so our fourth question is, what do you think that Muhammad Ali and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. would have to say about the way that their legacies and what they fought for? And also when we think about their legacies, let's pull into that the legacies of other civil rights activists, right? So what would Muhammad Ali and Dr. Martin Luther King have to say about the way that their legacies are taught through our public and private education systems? Kindea, I saw that.
They would be heartbroken, in my opinion, because all that fighting, all that sweat, all that blood, all those tears, to still be dealing with voting rights, to still be dealing with police brutality, to still be dealing with the school system. And I know they fought for the Brown versus School of Education. And it's like, we're in these schools, but we're not represented. We're not represented. We're not respected in these schools. We're not pushed in these schools. We're passed by grade. They would be heartbroken because we're heartbroken because we're still dealing with it. And we know that. I feel like another thing, sorry, not to cut my last thought off, but I feel like another thing that, I'm so sorry. Let me just run it back to my last thought. But anyway, yeah, so I feel like they'd be heartbroken because I feel like they would kind of be like, what did we do all that for? For the next generation, we didn't do enough or things like that. But it's just, that's not the reality. It's not true. The system is so strongly blueprinted that there's so many things beyond those little things we can, so yeah, kind of mumbling, but that was a very good question. So
I think that was very well said, Kindea. And just to add on to that, I think that a lot of what we're learned in the education system, and I'm speaking from a public school background because I haven't attended a private school, but just from what I've seen, I feel like a lot of the narratives are sugar coated. And I feel like a lot of the textbooks that we receive are created by white people who want to sugarcoat the narrative and make Muhammad Ali and Martin Luther King Jr. and other activists seem more peaceful to fit their narrative. And I'm not saying that they weren't peaceful, because they absolutely were, but I think they also had a radical side in which they would do anything to fight for justice for all. And I feel like that's not shown because they want to appeal to other white people. So I definitely think that they would think that their narrative is being sugarcoated and that they're not being represented as who they really were.
Okay, I have to completely agree with that because especially with our school systems, I'm talking from a public education. It's all about comfortability, and it's comfortability for white people in general, in terms of how they describe events and what events they do teach us, which are hardly any, except the peaceful ones where we don't really do anything too much. And I honestly, that I feel like MLK and Muhammad would be deeply disappointed in the way our school systems handled teaching us all these fights, and all the work we've done is just not taught at all. And I was just deeply disappointed about that. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. A thought was just struck. Something that I feel is so inconsistent and unfair about that is that most of us learned our history about our people through organizations or through our parents, if our parents pushed that and implemented that. And that's unfair in a way, because not everybody has parents who will teach them about themselves. Their parents might not even know about the history of Black people and themselves. And the schools are definitely not doing it. School is where a child youth from the age of preschool, whatever age that is, to senior, like we're in school a long time. It's their job to inspire us, to get us ready. Because when you know who you are, it changes you. When you know where you come from, it changes you. So it's unfair. I think these organizations are great, but for people who don't know about them, they shouldn't have to go out and find it. It should already be a given. Just being here and being respected. I mean, that's the least y'all could do, is tell our story right.
Yeah, you completely stole my statement. I think when many Black students, when you talk with each other, often as they get older, they realize that, I know nothing about my history, and I know nothing about what happened years before me. So often they have to, self-educate themselves, like Kindea said. And that's one of the most heartbreaking things. It's such an injustice to our legacy and our story. And yeah, as Kindea said, I personally learned so much about myself when I was able to take it upon myself to learn about my history and where I come from. And so just little things like that, I mean, they would be completely unsatisfied. And, as we just recently, we have discussions of critical race theory and historically accurate curriculum, and to see such prominent people, white people, disown that narrative, and completely tackle not only that, but equity strategies within a public school system as well, has been so disheartening, because you can see where they come from such a one-sided perspective, and how much power they have to determine what we learn. And so they would completely not stand beside what the majority of these education stakeholders are being a part of.
Yeah, completely agree with that and what everyone was saying. I really think like the way like MLK and Muhammad Ali are like described to us in our education, it's almost like it's like the fight is over. Like that's how it's framed. Like they're like, oh, everything is solved, and like that it's like such a like it's just this picture that's just not real. It's not accurate. And it makes it seem like the problems are all gone, but that's just not true. And so I think they'd be sad to see that. And then also, I was going to talk about like what Soliana was talking about, like critical race theory and just like all this legislation about like removing like parts of like POC history and like specifically like Black and Indigenous history from like textbooks because it makes people uncomfortable. Like the fact that history is being removed and like they like Kindea and all of you guys were talking about, like you often have to learn from other sources because your history is barely even told. And so to take that small part of history that's of POC history that's included in these textbooks and trying to silence that too, it absolutely makes my heart break. And I think that would be how like MLK and Muhammad Ali would feel. And like just the other day I was with a group of students and we were at the Capitol like trying to rally against all this legislation. And the thing about it is it's so vague that they just say it's really vague and they're going to take out like they just make this general statement, and that allows them to take advantage of that. And so they can take away so many works that teaches like the nuance of history and the struggles of slavery and all of that stuff that's sometimes it is uncomfortable, but it isn't a reason to completely ignore it. And telling those stories and that history is super important to making sure we never repeat it. So I don't know. I think they would be sad to see that legislation like this is even in circulation. It would probably make them very upset. So yeah.
And I have a quick thought to add on if we have time. What Kindea said really resonated with me when she said like how we kind of are forced to go out and discover our own identities and discover our own history. And just speaking from a biracial girl's perspective, I'm mixed with both Black and white. I don't think I've ever really learned about where biracial people were in history. So really, that was really true for me, that I had to go out and find like my own identity, where I fit into history. And I think that is a complete injustice that we have to do that. It should be given to us. If you're saying that you're educating us, then you need to educate us properly.
Sorry, I'm like trying to click things on my iPad and I'm freaking out here. No, that was awesome. Thank you all so much. I completely agree. And as a part of, especially I think something that you said, Spatina, of I want to make sure I get it correct, that the fight is over, right? And that sometimes it's taught in the way that this fight is over. And so I think that was a really good segue into the fact that into our next question. And so from the nods when Spatina said that, I think we can agree that our fight is not over. So what is your dream for society? And what steps must be taken now to lay the groundwork for that dream?
I really like the topic we were talking about, so I'm going to bring it up a little bit again for my dream. I I want a society where we can have those uncomfortable moments and be okay with, accepting the hard truths of our society and our history, and being able to have those discussions. And like future lawmakers today are not going to know about any of those parts of history, and without that they're just doomed to repeat it. And I feel like as a start, critical race theory, like, is just something that should not like be opposed. And I feel like that's our first step towards a society that's more accepting and just.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I would say for me, like a big part of my life is my education. It's like, I don't know, it's just like what I focus on, what I think about all the time. And, being in like Kentucky Student Voice Team and Max and Semi, like all of them are trying to like, fight more for this like educational equity. And really, like, I think that's an issue that holds so close to my heart, because it just like it really makes me sad to see that like so many students don't have the opportunity to succeed and do well, and I have. And like just like the fact that I have so much at my fingertips, and so many students might not even have like a textbook to refer to at home, and like they have nothing that they can use. And so it really is just so sad to see, because these students deserve the same opportunities. And I think we really don't talk about it enough, but education is not a level playing field. And I started up here, and so many students start down here, and it just goes lower and lower, and it's so sad. And then I think also education is what allows us to kind of break generational inequities. It's how, like, for example, for me, I might possibly pursue something in a STEM career. Those jobs tend to be pretty high paying. And so then I'm able to, live a financially stable life and provide for my family and do all of that, and provide resources to my children. But for some other students who don't have the same resources I do, they may never be able to get to those careers, simply because they didn't have opportunities and resources to. And so then they don't get the jobs that are as high paying, and then they don't get to provide those resources and textbooks to their to their children, because they have to focus on, like making sure they are supported in like with other basic needs. And so it just continually perpetuates. And if we don't stop the cycle now, it's never going to stop. So I would just say, like, my dream is to see a world where every student has the same opportunity to succeed. Every student has, college and whatever they want to do, it's a possibility. And they don't think, money or like their background is going to stop them.
I completely agree. Educational inequity is something that is really close to my heart as well. And I completely agree with everything Spatina said. I think of it as more of like a broader question, and something that I think it's changed my life, has changed all of our lives in Max, is activism. And the hard truth is not everybody gets to experience or pursue activism as well. It's often very privileged spaces as well. You have to seek out these opportunities and get it. But then resources as well, like Spatina said, is not always within certain communities. And so activism is it often tends to be a very white space and very just privileged space in general. And so I just hope that we get to tackle these inequities all over with diverse student activism and youth activism. And we really get to uplift those who don't believe that, they can pursue that. Because I think when we see it, we see all these amazing leaders such as Muhammad Ali and Martin Luther King. And often, I was like this, I was like, I can never reach that. I can never do what they did. I can't do that. But the truth is, so many people can contribute to so many things. And once we recognize that we have that strength within us, then I believe that we will truly be able and go out to combat many different issues within our society. And we need to do that from a diverse perspective. And we need to, acknowledge everybody and bring in everybody from everywhere so that we can uplift as many groups as possible. So yeah, I completely agree.
I can go really fast. Um, I definitely agree with everything that has been said, and just adding on to that, my dream is kind of cliche, but it's the same as Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream, and I think we really hit on the fact that his dream is not over. So, and it's just for equality for all, and I think there are definitely all these systems of oppression that are constantly holding people of color back. So my dream is that eventually we break down those systems, we reform them and make them better so that everyone can succeed. And yeah, I think that's all I have right now.
My dream is that our generation takes over everything. We let this last generation get out of here, because they are messed things up. We have so many things we have to clean up and redo and restructure and fix because people don't know how to act right. That's okay, because we're gonna fix it. And that's my dream, and I can't wait to see my dream play out. But another thing that I was thinking about is, as far as being a Black person and my frustrations with how the world has, I feel, put me in a box. I think let's stop making Black history seem like Black history is Black history when Black history is American history. Something about that disconnect, something about it always offended me. Something about this separation with it just never sat well with me. And I feel like my also dream, especially for my people, is that we understand we don't come from prisoners, we don't come from slaves, we don't come from gangs, we come from royalty, we come from beauty, we come from love, we come from family. And knowing who they are, it can really change them, I believe. So I hope our generation anyway, we really implement and we really push and we really enforce Black kids to love each other, to love themselves in a world that will not love them. Because it's important that we build that solidarity in them. And that is my dream. Because if we can do that for more Black kids, the progress. Because the reality is I'm at this point where I cannot trust any president. I'm just at this point. I cannot trust any president, any government official to understand the struggle, understand what we need as a community. We need to build that solidarity within one another to be strong enough to make the change on our own. So that's my dream, and I believe we can make the steps, but the first step is learning who the heck you are and putting that in our kids. But then that falls back into our education system. But at this point, we're fighting for that. We're going backwards with it. So families, please understand the importance of your child understanding who they are, where they come from, because it will change them for life.
So first, I just want to say thank you to all 5 of you for joining us, one in this virtual space, but also, even though it's a panel and it's hosted virtually, you all brought in your vulnerability, and that's hard, but that's a really good way to help push for progress and push for change. So thank you so much for doing that. Thank you for waking up early on a day maybe where you were gonna sleep in to do that. I also just want to say to anyone that's joining us in the crowd, this kind of was like a little mini Max meeting. This is what we do in the Muhammad Ali Center Council students, right? We pose big questions and we sit as a group of anywhere from 25 to 40 and we tackle those questions, right? And we dig really deep. So just a shameless plug, if you want to learn more about the Max program, please visit alicenter.org and you can look at our youth education programs. You can find ways to support Max there if you want to support the program, or if you are a parent or a guardian or a friend of someone who you think could benefit from Max or maybe could be a potential future Mac, plug them in. We take applications every fall. and it's for anyone that's in 8th grade to 12th grade. I'm sorry, anyone that's in 9th grade to 12th grade. And so with that, I hope that everyone finds a good way, not only today, but every single day, to uplift the legacy that Muhammad Ali and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. left for us, and the dreams that they left for us, and we continue the fight that they had. With that being said, thank you everyone for joining, and we will see you next time.
All right, we are done. We're off live stream. You guys did so well.
It was really good. It was really, really good. Y'all